My name is Elizabeth Baptiste and I am the Mayor of Waltham Forest. I am pleased that you have joined us for this important commemoration. Today is Holocaust Memorial Day. It's the day that marks the 77th anniversary of the liberation of the first and the largest of the Nazi death camps. On that one day in January 1945, the world began to see the true scale and organisation of the Nazi campaign. A campaign of genocide against the Jews, plus the state-sponsored murder of hundreds of thousands of others who didn't fit their ideal. One day is this year's theme for Holocaust Memorial Day. We come together on this one day to remember all those who experienced a one day where their life, their world changed forever. The victims of Nazi persecution and those affected by subsequent genocide in Cambodia, Rwanda, Bosnia and Darfur. One day, when perhaps the law changed to their detriment, or one day when they were arrested, one day when they died, or one day when they were liberated and could begin to live the rest of their lives as a survivor. Why is this one day important to us? It provides us with a chance to reflect on how hate has, and if left unchecked, can continue to destroy lives and divide communities. We pause to think of the millions who have died and to pay our respects. We acknowledge the bravery of the survivors and others, witnesses who have stood up and shared their stories so that the pain and horror of genocide are not forgotten. And we make our own commitment to call out hatred and say that there is no space for hate. Let the lessons of the past inform what we do for a better future. A future where one day there is no genocide. Thank you.
I wanted to remember the words of Eli Wiesel, who was 15 years old when he was deported to Auschwitz. Never shall I forget that night, the first night in the camp that turned my life into one long night, 7 times sealed. Never shall I forget that smoke. Never shall I forget the small faces of the children whose bodies I saw transformed into smoke under a silent sky. Never shall I forget those flames that consumed my faith forever. Never shall I forget the nocturnal silence that deprived me for all eternity of the desire to live. Never shall I forget those moments that murdered God and my soul and turned my dreams to ashes. Never shall I forget those things, even were I condemned to live as long as God Himself. Never.
Today I'm going to read to you a famous poem by Martin Niemöller, First They Came. He is a complicated figure in history. Originally an anti-Semitic Nazi supporter, he changed his views after being imprisoned in a concentration camp for speaking out against Nazi control of the churches. Niemöller's poem has inspired people across the world to speak out against oppression, and it is a reminder that things do not always fall neatly into the category of good or bad. It is important that we learn from such experiences to better understand the Holocaust. First they came for the communists, and I was not a communist, so I did not speak out. Then they came for the socialists, and I was not a socialist, so I did not speak out. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I was not a trade unionist, so I did not speak out. Then they came for the Jews, and I am not Jewish, so I did not speak out. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me.
The last, the very last, so richly, brightly, dazzlingly yellow. Perhaps if the sun's tears would sing against a white stone, such a yellow is carried lightly way up high. It went away, I'm sure, because it wished to kiss the world goodbye. For 7 weeks I've lived here, penned up inside the ghetto, but I've found my people here. The dandelions call me, and the white chestnut candles in the court. Only I never saw another butterfly. That butterfly was the last one. Butterflies don't live here, in the ghetto.
My name's Richard Sweden. I'm one of the Waltham Forest councillors, and Holocaust Memorial Day means a great deal to me on account of my Jewish heritage, although I don't identify as Jewish. My father was a secular Jew, and I also have Jewish ancestors on my mother's side as well. I'm a gay man, and I've been politically active more or less since about the age of 16. So I would have had a bit of a rough time had I been around in Nazi Germany. I'd like to read you a poem by Anne Ranasinger. She was born on October the 2nd, 1925, as Anneliese Katz in Essen, Germany. She's an internationally renowned poet. Escaping from Nazi Germany to England, she married a Sri Lankan professor and became a citizen of Sri Lanka. Although primarily a poet, she's also published short stories, essays and translations. Her works have been broadcast on radio and published in 17 countries and translated into 9 languages. One of the phrases in it refers to the Sabbath blessing, which is normally taken in Jewish households by the matriarch of the household. Blessed be the Lord. And I'm going to interpolate a short phrase of Hebrew at that particular time, which isn't in the original text, I don't think. Anne would have objected to that. Holocaust 1944, to my mother. I do not know in what strange far-off earth they buried you, nor what harsh northern winds blow through the stubble, the dry, hard stubble above your grave. And did you think of me that frost-blue December morning, snow-heavy and bitter, as you walked naked and shivering under the leaden sky, in the last moment when you knew it was the end of nothing and the beginning of nothing? Did you think of me? Oh, I remember you, my dearest. Your pale hands spread in the ancient blessing, your eyes bright and shining above the candles, intoning the blessing. Baruch atah Adonai, blessed be the Lord. And therein lies the agony and the horror, that after all there was no martyrdom, but only futility, the futility of dying, the end of nothing, and the beginning of nothing. I weep red tears of blood, your blood.
Hello, I'm Ruth Kaufman, a local humanist. I'm grateful to have this opportunity to speak today because people with no religion also were murdered during the Holocaust, also grieve, and must also remember and do everything that we can to prevent more of man's inhumanity to man during this one life that we believe we have. I'm going to read excerpts from the Holocaust Memoirs of a Bergen-Belsen survivor, Nanette Blitz-Koenig. Nanette was a Dutch Jew, not religious, but a part of the Jewish community. She was a schoolmate of Anne Frank, and she was just 11 when the Nazis invaded her homeland, and she was 14 when her family was seized and taken to the concentration camp at Bergen-Belsen. I'm not going to read details of her story and the terrible things that she suffered, though it is vital testimony, but I will read some of her reflections from many decades later. In the introduction to her memoirs, explaining her need to speak out, she said, "Unfortunately, there is no delete button for the mind. I would like to be able to erase everything I have lived and seen, especially all the suffering. But then I stop and think, what good would it do to forget it all? What would I have to gain? Peace of mind? Perhaps. But it would have been a fake peace, a blind peace, because I know that forgetting is allowing others to experience the worst of your nightmares." When remembering the Holocaust, everyone wonders, how did we let this happen? How can human beings be capable of such brutality, such lack of love? And if adults have trouble processing it all, imagine what it is like for little kids. One of my grandchildren came to me one time and said, "Grandma, is it true?" I was paralysed with fear of making him lose his innocence. But what could I possibly say to him? My grandson needed to know what horror was and that it was something that could exist. "Yes, it is true," I told him. "That is why we must fight to the end so it never happens again." On these pages, you will read about events that still haunt my dreams to this day. I could never remain silent after all that happened, after all I have lived to tell. As the Spanish philosopher and poet George Santayana once said, "Those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it." And at the end of her memoirs, she wrote, "In sharing my story on these pages, I hope that I can help the world never forget what happened in that grim period of our history, so that people can understand that coexisting is essential to having a happy life and furthering humanity. During World War II, it was Jews who suffered. If we do not learn a lesson after that, tomorrow another group may become the victims. Our most precious asset is freedom. The freedom to come and go, the freedom to have your beliefs, the freedom to be who you are. We must fight so that everyone can exercise their freedom, the kind of freedom that does not invade other people's spaces, that does not nullify others." I never believed in the superiority of any single being compared to others, because when we take away our particular aspects as far as culture and lifestyle, we all share the same core. I wrote this book in the name of freedom and tolerance. With my testimony, I want to give voices to those who have been silenced and can no longer share their stories and sorrow. Thank you.
Hello, this is Paul Neville. I'm the Director of Digital and ICT for the London Borough of Waltham Forest. I'm going to read to you today the Holocaust Memorial Day prayer. As a descendant of victims of the Holocaust, this is particularly meaningful for me. Kel Malei Rachamim, the Holocaust Memorial Prayer, which means God full of compassion, is a Jewish prayer for the departed that is recited at funeral services on visiting the graves of relatives, especially during the holy month of Elul, and after having been called up to the reading of the Torah on the anniversary of death of a close relative. The prayer originated in Jewish communities of Western Europe and Eastern Europe, and since the end of the Holocaust, the prayer has been adapted as a memorial prayer for the victims of the Holocaust and Nazi persecution. I'm firstly going to read it in Hebrew, and then I'll read the translation. Kel Malei Rachamim Shochein Bamromim Hametzei Menucha Nechona Al Kanfei HaShechina B'Mahalot Kedoshim Utorim Kazar Rakia Masirim Et Nishmat Acheinu B'nei Israel HaKadoshim V'Atorim Shenaflu B'dei Rotzchim V'Nishpach Damam B'Auschwitz Meidanek Treblinka V'Sham Machanot Hashmad B'Europa Shnagov Shenishchatzu V'Nisrafu V'Shenitba'u V'Shenechneku Al Kiddush Hashem Bavo Shekol Kulam Po Mitpalalim Ba'ad Haskarat Nishmatam B'Gadei Dentei Menuchatam Lachein Ba'al Rachamim Yastrim B'Sete Kanafecha Le'olamim V'Yitzra B'Yitzra Chayim Et Nishmatam Hashem Hunachlatam V'Yanucho Am Mishkavotam V'Shalom V'Nomar Amen. O God, who is full of compassion, who dwells on high, grant perfect rest in your divine presence to all the souls of our holy and pure brethren, whose blood was spilt by the murderers in Auschwitz, Belzec, Bergen-Belsen, Dachau, Majdanek, Sobibor, Treblinka, and all the other extermination camps in Europe, who were killed, strangled, burned, buried alive for the sanctification of your name, for whose souls we now pray. May their resting place be in the Garden of Eden. May the Master of Mercies shelter them in the shadow of his wings for eternity, and may he bind their souls in the bond of life. The Lord is their heritage, and may they repose in peace in their resting places. And let us say, Amen.
Long gone the sound of battle from this foreign dell, as we tread again the Belsen grass, remembering comrades, young men all, who died to reach this awful hell. Hallowed now for eternity, as the clouds from memory swiftly pass. Listen then, can't you hear the silence here around, telling us of terror and an ancient bestial fear? How real is this silence that permeates from underground only 50 years ago, but now forever the silence condemns. For here they lie, anonymous, neath the soil as we reverently bow, remnants of a living dead whose silence still transmits, transcends. Listen to the silence still and lift your head on high. Are you waiting for a question or an answer, and to a void to fill? Quicken then the pulse, breathe deeper still. Answer the silence to question, why? Thank you.